This is Capital Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are Jason McGuire with New York Families and Michael Geer at the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Well, guys, we recorded our show last Wednesday about 5 hours before it happened, the tragic shooting death of Charlie Kirk. We would be remiss if we did not get your thoughts. Jason, I'll start with you. I know a lot has been said, but is there anything left to be said that hasn't already been said about Charlie Kirk?
Well, I think this was a unique moment in the fact that when this happened, there was such a rapid response, and it crossed organizational boundaries. Nobody was protecting their turf when they were speaking out positively about the work of Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA. It's not to say that people didn't have disagreements maybe with approach or style or tone or tenor or different things, but in that moment, you saw a conservative movement across the country, some Christ-based, some not, just responding in very positive ways to all that Charlie Kirk had done in his very short life. But it also revealed some darkness that we see in the American psyche today. There was a YouGov poll that showed that most Americans across the political spectrum say political violence is never justified, but younger and more liberal Americans are more likely to disagree. That's the striking part for me, is that you saw it in a way that we did not see it so visible before. And I'm not even thinking about politicians at the highest levels. It was teachers, it was nurses, people on social media that were reacting in some very dark ways. And I think there's something we have to be very conscious of in American psyche right now.
Michael, Charlie Kirk always used to say the antidote to political violence was more speech, not less speech. He was in that lion's den more than anybody else, in a winsome sort of way, talking about some of these controversial issues. As Jason alluded to, there's been a lot of hate speech since his murder. Is it right to crack down on this sort of activity?
Well, I think it's legitimate for employers and for others to call it out, and in cases where people are celebrating death, to potentially lose their job. The question is whether government gets involved in that sort of thing or prosecutes people because of that speech. Those are two different things, unless, again, if someone is calling for murder, then the government does get involved. So there is a line between speech we don't like and speech that's actually calling for violence and harm to other human beings.
Yeah. Jason, it's time to move on some other issues in the news this week. There was a Siena poll out that I thought was interesting. It basically said this: if it's Governor Hochul versus anybody else in next year's election, she loses. But if it's Governor Hochul against Elise Stefanik, well, right now she's got a 25-point lead. How do you make sense of that Siena survey, and how vulnerable is Hochul next year?
Well, I think you've got a couple of things going on. One is the start of the new school year. People are starting to tune in a little bit more after the lengthy summer. Poll numbers are going to move around. The governor has been moving around the state dealing with this cell phone ban that is very popular. And so I think that's an issue that has played to the governor's favor. Remember, the governor's going to have to go through a very difficult budget cycle next year, and decisions that are made there will likely also have an impact on her polling. So polling numbers are going to move. The other thing that's reflected, I think, in that polling is that in New York, President Trump is very unpopular. And if you have a candidate who is aligned very closely with President Trump, that is impacting poll numbers in that gubernatorial race. So there's a lot of things in play, and I'll just say we have a lot of time between now and November 2026.
Yeah. Well, the Pennsylvania budget was due at the end of June, Michael. It's now September 19th. That's way past the due date. Governor Shapiro says Republicans in the state legislature are holding this up on purpose to make him look bad in next year's election. What say you?
Well, he's right in terms of it's the Republican Senate that is not playing ball with the governor in terms of his spending priorities, but those spending priorities would head the state into a very bad fiscal position that impacts the future generations in Pennsylvania. We need to have a balanced budget, and I don't think it's being done to harm the governor, but rather because of fiscal responsibility that Republicans believe should be in place.
Gotcha. We talked about Governor Hochul, Jason. She this week also made news by endorsing Zohran Mamdani for mayor of New York City, the self-avowed socialist who wants government-run grocery stores and $30 an hour minimum wage. That Zohran Mamdani. What What advantage does the governor see in hitching her political wagon to him? Could this endorsement hurt her next year?
Yeah, it's interesting to see the endorsement come out because Mr. Mamdani is already up double digits in polling in this particular race. So I don't think he needed the governor's endorsement. Really, it's a matter of what is the governor going to get out of this. She did not do well in the last election in New York City. Her numbers were depressed there. Yeah. And by aligning herself with Zohran Mamdani, she may be looking to get ahead of that and try to boost her numbers in New York City ahead of next year's gubernatorial race. She also begins to shore up on the left flank by having the Democratic Socialists of America as one of her endorsed candidates. Then she will also show herself as being more progressive and may help herself in a Democratic primary next year.
Are you surprised that former Governor Cuomo is polling so badly this late in the game?
I think Governor Cuomo has failed to realize that his moment has come and passed. He was at his peak of popularity during the early days of COVID when he was large and in charge. But since that time, he has been waning. He is really a shell of what he was as a former candidate. And I just don't think he can read the room right now. And frankly, the whole Democratic Party is moving to younger candidates. And the more senior members of that party are having a very difficult time seeing themselves to the door in the midst of that.
Gotcha. Well, Michael, I know Monday's a big day for you. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but I want to talk about abortion politics first. Everyone's looking ahead to the 2026 midterms. It's a big election this year in Pennsylvania with those 3 state Supreme Court seats on the ballot. Talk about why that matters so much when it comes to protecting life in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, those 3 seats are actually retention votes for sitting members of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. 3 Supreme Court justices who ran as Democrats and are endorsed by Planned Parenthood want to get another 10-year term in the Supreme Court, and that's the retention vote. They've all pretty much sworn allegiance to the issue of abortion. They do it in kind of hidden sort of ways, but the Planned Parenthood endorsement makes it very clear that these are Supreme Court justices who want to advance the abortion agenda. That is, I think, very clear to those who observe that court race.
How vulnerable are they this year?
Well, it's interesting because there's a lot of sentiment just sort of against, as Jason just said, older politicians being in office, and so some of the youth vote may just think it's time for a change and may not look at the issues so much. The other thing is voter turnout in these off-year elections, and so really turnout is going to be the difference in whether they survive this retention vote or not.
Gotcha. Jason, the New York State Legislature this year, much to your dismay and to the dismay of many pro-life New Yorkers, approved a doctor-assisted suicide bill. That happened months ago, but there's still been no action from the governor. How come?
Yeah, I think if the governor was really anxious to sign this bill, she would have done it very quickly. I think there is some thought and dialogue going into this process. I don't know where the governor's ultimately going to land on this. We are certainly hoping for a veto, but the delay in time that is passing does indicate that I think those that are reaching out to her are having an impact, and New Yorkers that are concerned about assisted suicide should continue to reach out to the governor's office and urge that veto.
So if she doesn't sign it, do they have to approve the legislation again next year? How does that work?
Yeah, if she does not sign the bill into law this year, if she chooses to veto, it could return next year, but I think it's unlikely because even in that scenario, they know they're going before a governor again who is prone to veto it. And so if it can be defeated this year, it's likely a victory for at least a couple of years or more.
Yeah, I know, Michael, you've got a busy weekend ahead of you getting ready for Monday, the 5th annual March for Life in Harrisburg, one of the largest rallies there is on the Capitol grounds this year. Monday, September 22nd. What is the message you hope to bring to the state capitol then?
Well, we continue every year, this is the 5th annual, to bring the message that every life is precious and that the legislature and the public need to work to protect every human life from conception until natural death. That is the basic message of that. And then there's particular legislation that we'll be drawing the audience's attention to. But basically, it's let's celebrate life, especially in a society that we've witnessed the cheapening of human life. We need to turn our focus back to protecting every human life.
And there are buses headed to Harrisburg for that rally if you'd like to attend the 5th annual March for Life. Michael, where can folks learn more online?
pafamily.org.
And stay informed on all the issues in the news in Albany. Jason, where can folks find you?
newyorkfamilies.org.